So for question number 1, we've got simplify leaving your answers in index form. So the first one says 7 to the power of 5 times 7 squared times 7. Now, when we multiply indices with the same base, we add the powers, and that's because this is effectively 7 times 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 7. Now, if there's no power here, that is effectively 7 to the power of 1. So 5 plus 2 plus 1 is 8, so we get 7 to the power of 8. For part 2, we've got 4 to the power of 7 squared. Now, when we have brackets, we multiply the indices, and that's because 4 to the 7 squared is effectively 4 to the power of 7 times 4 to the power of 7. Now, 7 plus 7 is 14, so 4 to the power of 14. And then this one here on the left, we've got 5n times 5 cubed over 5 to the power of 6. On the right, we've got 5 to the power of 4. And it says find the value of n. So if we were to multiply both sides by 5 to the power of 6, we would get 5 to the power of n times 5 cubed is equal to 5 to the power of 4 times 5 to the power of 6. Now, if we simplify the indices, this becomes 5 to the power of n plus 3 is equal to 4 plus 6 is 10, so 5 to the power of 10. And then if 5 to the n plus 3 is equal to 5 to the power of 10, that means that n plus 3 is 10, therefore n is 7. So question number 2, it says find the highest common factor of 147, 42 and 252. Now, the easiest way to do this is to find the factors, the prime factors of each number, which seems like quite a lot for 2 marks. But anyway, so we'll start with 42 as it's the easiest one. So 42 is 6 times 7, 7's a prime. 6 is 2 times 3, and they're both primes, so I stop. Now we'll look at 147. Now 147 is divisible by 3, so 1 plus 4 is 5, plus 7 is 12. 12 is in the 3 times table, so this is divisible by 3. Now just on the right here, let's work it out. So 3 into 147, so 3 goes into 14, 4 times remainder 2, and 3 goes into 27 9 times, so that'll be 3 times 49, where 3 is prime, and then 49 is 7 times 7, and then finally 252 is also divisible by 3, because 5 plus 2 plus 2 is 9, 9 is in the 3 times table, again, so 252, 3 goes into 25 8 times, remainder 1, and it goes into 12 4 times. So then we get 84, which is not prime, hence we don't circle it. And then 84 would be 7 times 12. 12 is 3 times 4, and then 4 is 2 times 2. Now, to find the highest common factor of these 3 numbers, we need things that are common to all 3. So they all involve a 3. So I'm going to write that one down here. They all involve a 7. So we'll cross those off. But then after that, this one has a 2, this one doesn't have a 2. So there's nothing else that's in common with these 3 branches. Again, maybe just to write that out on the side here, 42 would be 2 times 3 times 7. 147 is 3 times 7 times 7. And then 252 was 2 times 2 times 3 times 3 times 7. So there was a 7 common to each, a 3 common to each. And then after that, there is nothing else that all 3 of them share in common. Therefore, the highest common factor is 3 times 7, which is 21. So for question number 3, we've got the total weight of 3 identical video games is 525 grams. It says work out the weight of 5 of them. So this is all about proportion. So 3 games are 525 grams. We need to work out how much 1 game weighs. So we could do that by doing 525 divided by 3. So 3 goes into 5 once, remainder 2, 7, remainder 1, 5. So each game is 175 grams. So then the weight of 5 games would be 5 times 175. Now, you can do this any way. I'm going to do it column method. So 5 5s are 25, 5 7s are 35, plus the 2 is 37, and then 5 times 1 is 5, plus the 3 is 8, so 875 grams. Now, question number 4 is on ratio, quite a common topic in the new GCSE. So it says the perimeter of a triangle is 90 centimeters and the lengths are in the ratios 3, 5, 7. It says work out the length of the longest side. Now, the longest side would relate to this ratio of 7. So we need to divide this perimeter by the total of these ratios to work out what one part would be worth, and then we multiply up. So if we start by doing 3 plus 5 plus 7, that is equal to 15. That means there are 15 parts to this ratio altogether. If we do 90 divided by 15, we can work out what one part is worth. 90 divided by 15 is 6. And then to work out the longest side, we would do 6 times 7, which is 42. Another way you could look at it is if you look at sort of side 1, so I'll call it S1, S2, S3. This is 1, 2, 3 parts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then this one will be 7. So altogether, we know that this adds up to 90, which is why we do the whole add together to get 15, because there's 15 boxes altogether. Divide 90 by 15 means each of these boxes is worth 6. So then the longest side is 6 times the 7 boxes, which is 42. Now, question number 5 is on forming an equation. So it says there are x stamps in a small packet, x plus 3 in a medium, and x plus 4 in a large. And the total number in the 3 packets is n. So it says write down an equation for n in terms of x. Well, n, then, if it's the total number, will be the x stamps in a small packet, plus the x plus 3 stamps in the medium, plus the x plus 4 in the large, which altogether is 3x plus 7. So x plus x plus x is 3x, 3 plus 4 is 7. Therefore, now the key bit here is it says write down an equation. So you need to write n is 3x plus 7. For part 2, it says there is a total of 61 stamps. Work out the number of stamps in the medium packet. Well, if there are 61 stamps altogether, that means that 3x plus 7 is equal to 61. Now, if we take away 7 from both sides, we get 3x is 54, and then divide by 3, we get x is 18. Now, if x is equal to 18, that means the medium packet, which is x plus 3, must have 18 plus 3, which is 21 stamps altogether. Question number 6 is about standard form. So it says write 75,000 in standard form. Now, 75,000 is standard form. We need to have this first part in between 1 and 10. So numbers in standard form are a times 10 to the power of b, where a is between 1 and 10, and then b is a whole number. So to make this number between 1 and 10, this would need to be 7.5. Now we would multiply 7.5 by 10. Now the number of times we do it to make it the same as this is basically the number of figures after the 7. So there are 4 figures there, so it's to the power of 4. Now for part B, it says a computer can carry out a simple calculation in 1 picosecond, where 1 picosecond is 10 to the power of minus 12 seconds. It says write down in standard form the time to carry out 75,000 simple calculations. Now, if this is one calculation, that means that 75,000 calculations would be 75,000 times 10 to the power of minus 12, so 75,000 picoseconds. Now we're going to use part A here because we've got 75,000 in standard form already, so that's 7.5 times 10 to the power of 4 times 10 to the power of minus 12, and then the rules of indices, we add the powers and we should get 7.5 times 10 to the power of minus 8. So 4 minus 12 is minus 8, or minus 12 plus 4 is minus 8, but it's 7.5 times 10 to the power of minus 8 seconds. For question number 7, it says Sally got 32 out of 80 in a maths test, and she got 38% in an English test. She wants to know if she got a higher percentage in maths or English. Did she? You must show your working. So we know she got 38% in English. So let's look at maths. So maths was 32 out of 80. Now we can change this by dividing both by 8 into 4 over 10. And then, so dividing by 8 each time. Now if we multiply top and bottom by 10, we would get 40 over 100, which is 40%. Therefore, did she get a high percentage in maths or English? She got a higher percentage in maths, and it's as 40% is bigger than 38%. So question number 8, we've got the length of Emma's journey from her home to her friend's house is 72 kilometers, and the journey takes 1 hour 20. Work out her average speed. Now the first thing I'm going to do is change her time into hours. So her time there, 1 hour 20. Now 20 minutes is 1/3 of an hour. So that makes that 1 and 1/3 hours, which if we write it as an improper fraction is 4/3 hours, I suppose. Now to work out the average speed, we need to do distance divided by time, which is 72 divided by this 4/3. Now when we're dividing by a fraction, we multiply by its inverse. So we do 72 times 3/4. Now in this case, it's most often easiest to do the division by the denominator first and then multiply by the numerator. So if we do 72 divided by 4, 4 goes into 7 once, remainder 3, which is 8. So we've got 18 times 3, which is 54. So the average speed is 54 kilometers an hour. For question number 9, we've got the mean of 6 numbers is 40, and it tells us that 3 of the numbers are 102, 60, and 30, and it says each of the remaining 3 numbers is equal to x. That says find the value of x. Now, if the mean of the 6 numbers is 40, that means the total of the 4 numbers must be 6 times 40, which is 240. Now, the numbers that we do have here, so we've got 102 plus 60 plus 30 plus 3x. So it says the remaining 3 numbers are equal to x. Now we know that these need to add up to 240. So if I add this up together, I get 192 plus 3x is 240. So then 3x is equal to 48. So x should be 16. Now, question number 10 is about inverse proportion. So it says y varies inversely as the cube of x. That means that y is proportional to 1 over x cubed. Now, when things are proportional, we can set up an equation. So y equals k divided by x cubed. And then we can work out what k is by multiplying x cubed with y. Now, we've been given 2 pieces of information. So y is 24 when x is 2. Therefore, k is equal to 2 cubed times 24, which is 8 times 24, which, let's go grid this time, is 160 plus 32, so 192. So k is equal to 192, which means then that we've got y is equal to 192 divided by x cubed. Now, this is our equation that links x and y. And it says find the value of x when y is minus 3. So I'm going to write that just over here on the right hand side. So minus 3 is equal to 192 divided by x cubed. So if I multiply up, I get minus 3x cubed is 192. Therefore, x cubed is 192 divided by negative 3. Now, again, 192, let's put 3 in, and then if you divide by negative, the answer will be negative. So 0, 6, 4. So x cubed is minus 64, therefore x is equal to minus 4. Because minus 4 times minus 4 is 16, times minus 4 is minus 64. So for question number 11, we have a regular pentagon. So it's asking us for the size in degrees of an interior angle. So one of these ones here. Now there are two ways you can do this. You can either use n minus 2 times 180 divided by n. So in this case that would be 3 times 180 divided by 5, which is 540 divided by 5, which is 108. Or you could use the exterior angle of a polygon. So the exterior angle is 360 divided by 5. Now 360 divided by 5 is 72. So if you divide by 10 is 36, and then if you double it, it gives you 72. Now if an exterior angle is 72, then an interior angle will be 180 minus that 72, which is 108. So there's two ways there to get the same thing. Now for part B, it says the point F lies such that CDF is 70. That's this angle here. So let's mark it on. So this one's 70. And it says FEA, that's this one here, is 85. Work out the reflex angle DFE. So that's this one here around the outside. Now, what we can do is, as we know the interior angle of a polygon of a pentagon is 108, we can work out what these two angles here are. Therefore, we can work out what this angle here, and then we can work out the reflex angle. So we can work out FDE, because it's going to be 108 minus 70, which is 38. So that's this one here. So that's 38. FED is going to be equal to 108 minus the 85, which in this case is 23. So that's this angle here. So that's 23. Now, if those are 38 and 23, we can work out this angle here, so DFE. So DFE is 180 minus 38 plus 23. So that's 180 minus 61, which is 119. So that's this angle here. So therefore, DFE, so the reflex angle, will be 360 minus 119, which is 241 degrees. So question number 12 is to do with ratio again, and scales is part B. So it says there are 32 students in a class, and all of the students are either left-handed or right-handed, and the ratio is 1 to 7. That says work out the number of right-handed students. Now, if the ratio is 1 to 7, 1 plus 7 is 8, so there's 8 parts altogether. 32 divided by 8 is 4, and then if we do 4 times 7, because that's the right-handed students part, 4 times 7 is 28, so there are 28 students. For part B, it says Sajid makes a scale model of a bus, and he uses a scale of 1 to 32, and it says the length of the scale model is 45. It says Chitra makes a scale model of the same bus with a scale of 1 to 48. Work out the length. Now there's a couple of ways of doing this. So you could do 45 times 32 to get the real length of the bus. So 45 times 32. So the length of the real bus is 1440, and then you could do division, so 1440 divided by 48 to work out the scale for Chitra. So you could do long division for that, and you'll get the answer 30 centimeters. That's one way of doing it. Another way you could do it is to have a look at using similarity. So you could work out the difference with the scales. So perhaps I'll write that at the bottom here. If you're looking at sort of the scale factor, if we do 48, which is the scale of the second one, and 32, which is the scale of the first one, that gives you 3/2. So going from S to C, so Chitra's is 3/2 times bigger, so 1.5 times the size. So if we wanted to work backwards, we could try the same thing with that. So instead of timesing by 3 over 2, we could divide by 3 over 2. So we want to work out what Chitra's scale of the model is. So what we could do is 45. So we put 45 in. If you multiply it, you get this whole model. So then if we divide, we would get the scale size. If you do 45 divided by 3 over 2, that's equal to 45 times 2 over 3, which is 90 over 3, which is 30. So it's two ways to get the same thing. So for question number 13, it says a bank pays compound interest of 1% per annum on its savings accounts, and Evan invests £7,500 for 2 years. Calculate the total interest gain. So firstly, 1% of 7,500 is 75. So after year 1, there'll be 7,575 in his account. Then for the second year, 1% of 7,575 is 75.75. So to find 1%, you divide by 100. Then if we add that on, we should get 7,650.75. It's after the total interest gain, so the difference between these two amounts. Now that would just be that amount plus that amount, which is £150.75. So we've gone from 7,500 to 7,650.75. So that's £150.75 more. So question number 14, we've got a Fibonacci sequence. Now the Fibonacci sequence is where the next term in the sequence is the sum of the previous two. So we've got A and B, so the next one is A plus B. The next term after that then would be A plus 2B. Now part A says show that the sixth term is 3A plus 5B. Now here we have A, B, A plus B. So the next term would be these two added together. So A plus 2B. Then, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the fifth term will be these two added together. So that would be 2A plus 3B. And then the sixth term would be these two added together, which is 3A plus 5B as required. Now it says, given that the third term is 7 and the sixth term is 29, find the value of A and the value of B. Now the third value then, so we've got A plus B is equal to 7. And then we've got 3A plus 5B is equal to 29. So we've got a simultaneous equation to solve. Now what we're going to do is times the top one by 5. So then I have 5A plus 5B is equal to 35. And then we've got 3A plus 5B is equal to 29. Now we're going to eliminate the B's here. They've got the same sign, so I'm going to subtract, which leaves me with 2A is equal to 6, therefore A is equal to 3. Now if A is equal to 3, then B must equal 4. So substituting it back into this first one, so 3 plus B is 7, so B must be 4. Now for question number 15, it says the probability that Mohammed is late for school is 0.05 and Helen is 0.15. And so Sam says the probability that Mohammed and Helen will both be late is 0.0075 because 0.05 times 0.15 is this. What assumption has Sam made? Now Sam has assumed that the events are independent. So the events are independent. Now independent events means that you were assuming that if two things happening, we're assuming that one doesn't affect the other, therefore we can multiply their probabilities. Or in other words, that their probabilities don't change. If they were not independent, then one of these probabilities would change dependent on what the other one was. So in other words, if Mohammed is late and that has an effect on Helen, then that's a dependent event. However, in this case, he's multiplied the probabilities for each person individually, which means that he's assuming that one does not affect the other. Therefore, they're independent. Now, question number 16 is an exponential equation. Now, what we want here is for both sides of the equation to have 3 to the power of something. That way we can solve for what x is. So we know that 3 to the power of 2x is equal to 1 over 81. Now, 81 itself is a power of 3, so 81 is 9 squared. and then 9 is 3 squared, so it's 3 squared squared, which is 3 to the power of 4. So maybe just to make a note of that, 81 is 9 squared, and then 9 is 3 squared, therefore 81 is 3 squared squared, which is 3 to the power of 4. Now, when it's 1 over something, it means we've got a negative power. So 3 to the power of 2x is equal to 3 to the power of minus 4. Now that we've got them in the same base, it means we can equate their powers. So 2x then is equal to minus 4. Now, if 2x is minus 4, that means x is minus 2. So question number 17, we've got a frequency table here about the length of time 100 people spent in a coffee shop. It says, on the grid, draw a cumulative frequency graph for your table. So the first thing we need to do is add a column to work out our cumulative frequency totals. So cumulative frequency being the running total, the first one is 4. The next one would be 4 plus 12, which is 16. And then we would add 26, which is 42, plus another 42 is 84. Plus 12 is 96, plus 4 is 100. Adds up to the 100 stated in the question. It's a good thing to check back to, so probably correct. Now, when we plot this, we always plot the end point, so that's this part, with the cumulative frequency, which is this part here. The reason why we plot the end point is so that then these 4 are then evenly distributed through. So for 20, we need to make a mark at 4, so that's about here. 40 is 16, up there. 60 is 42, that's here. 80 was 84. So each of the little squares is 2. And 100 was 96, therefore 120 is 100. And then we join this up with a nice smooth curve. Now, where it starts from is where the data starts from. So 0 is the first value given. So from 0, I shall start. And then we should have a smooth curve going through. Now, for part B, it says, use your graph to find an estimate for the number of these people who spent longer than 70 minutes in the coffee shop. So we go from 70, we go up to where it meets the graph. So come up, preferably with a ruler, you draw a straight line going straight up to here, and then go across, so say it's about here. So if we go across to here, that is 66. Now, we know there are 100 people altogether, so if we go from this point up to here, so greater than 70 means we need to have all of these people here. So 100 minus 66 is approximately 34. Now, obviously, this depends on the smoothness of your graph. So for mine, I probably went a little bit over, so it could have been slightly smaller, but there will always be a range that's acceptable in the mark scheme. Now, surprise, surprise, we've got another ratio question. So it says n pounds is shared between 3 people in the ratio 2 to 3 to 7, and the largest share is 540 pounds more than the smallest. Calculate the value of n. Now, the easiest way to do this is to use boxes. So 1, 2, 1, 2, and 3. Now, this helps to illustrate what the question is actually asking. Now, we know that all of these add up to n. And it says that the largest share is 540 pounds more than the smallest share. Now, this is the smallest share, and this is the largest share. Now, if this one's 540 pounds more, if we look at this point here, this is how much more this share has. So this must be equal to 540 pounds. So we can work out what one of these boxes is worth by doing 540 divided by 5. Now, 540 divided by 5 is 108, and that's what one of these boxes is. Now, how many boxes are there altogether? There are 12. So we can do 108 times 12, which gives £1,296. Okay, so again, drawing some boxes, looking at the difference between them. So this is the smallest, this is the largest. 5 boxes is the difference. That must be what £540 is. You can work out 1 by doing 540 divided by 5. And then once you know what 1 box is, you can work out what the total is by multiplying. If it had asked you for what the middle one is or for what the smallest one is, etc., by using this method, once you know what 1 box is, you can work out individual parts or the whole amount as required. So question number 19, we've got surds, and it says express root 48 plus root 108 in the form k root 6, where k is a surd. Now the easiest way to do this is to combine the surds. So if we start with root 48, now that's equal to root 16 times root 3, which is 4 root 3. Square root of 108. Now using this piece of information, I'm going to go with something times root 3. So what times 3 gives us 108? So we could divide it, which would give us 36. So that's 6 root 3. Now, because they've got the same surd, we can combine them. So 4 root 3 plus 6 root 3 would be 10 root 3. Now, this isn't in the form that it wants here, so it wants it as k root 6, where k is a surd. So what I'm going to do is combine this back together to make it a single surd. Now, we know that 10 is the square root of 100, so I'm going to write that as root 100 times root 3. Now, multiplying those together gives us root 300. Now, writing it in this form here, so something times root 6, well, 6 times 50 is 300, so k then must be root 50. So generally speaking, this question is quite tricky in terms of you're using multiple rules of surds and trying to get it to a form that's probably a little bit unfamiliar, so writing it as a surd times another surd. So question number 20, we have a histogram, and it says the information here is about time taken by cyclists to finish the cycle race. Now it says 7 cyclists took 80 minutes or less to finish the race. Work out an estimate who took more than 95 minutes. Now the reason why they're giving us this first bit of information here is because we can use this to work out the frequency density. Now 80 minutes or less is this bar here. Now to work out the frequency density, so frequency density is frequency divided by class width. Now we know the frequency is 7, the width is 10, so this here must be 0.7, so this will help us with the scale. So if this is 0.7, then this must be 1, that one's 2, 3, 4, and then 5. And it says work out an estimate for the number of cyclists who took more than 95 minutes. So in other words, we're splitting this bar into 2, and we want this bit and then this bar here. So for this bar, we can work out the frequency by finding the area of the bar, so the width times the density. So for this one, it's 5 times 2.2. So that's the first bar, and to that we're going to be adding 20 times 1.2. Now 5 times 2.2, so 2.2 times 10 is 22, so half of that is 11. And then 10 times 1.2 is 12, double that is 24. So the answer should be 35. Now for B, it says explain why your answer to part 1 is only an estimate. So for this one here, we don't know the actual values, so we don't know actual values. So what we're effectively doing is we're assuming that they're evenly spaced. So we don't know the actual values, so we are assuming they are equally, now the correct mathematical word would be distributed. So we're just assuming that for everybody that's within these 2 times here, that half of them are in the first half and half of them are in the second. So in reality, this is only an estimate. Now for question 21, we says C is the curve with equation y equals x squared minus 4x plus 4. And it says L is the straight line with equation y equals 2x minus 4. And it says that the line L intersects the curve C at 2 points A and B. Calculate the exact length of AB. Now, what this basically means is that we've got some curve and some straight line, and what it wants us to do is work out how long. So let's say that, let's imagine that was A and that was B. Obviously, this is just an example. It's not this exact curve or line. But what it's asking for is the length of this line. So what we're going to need to do is work out what the coordinates are, and then we can use Pythagoras to work out the length. Now, the way that we work out where the coordinates are is we equate the two lines together. So we say x squared minus 4x plus 4 is equal to 2x minus 4, because where they're equal to each other is where they intersect. Now, if we set this equal to 0, we'll get x squared minus 6x plus 8 is equal to 0, and then we can solve the quadratic by factorizing. So thinking about sum and product, so multiplies to give positive 8 but adds to give negative 6 means that both values must be negative, and then 4 and 2 would be the two that multiply to give 8 and add to give minus 6. That means the x coordinates are 2 or x is 4. Now what we're going to need to do is work out what their y values are as well. So we're going to substitute them into the line because this is the easiest one to substitute into. So for the first one, we get y is equal to 2 times 2 minus 4, which is equal to, let's get rid of that bracket, which is equal to 4 minus 4, which is 0. So y is 0 here. And for this one here, we've got x is 4, so y equals 2 times 4 minus 4. So 8 minus 4 is 4. So our coordinates then, so A would be 2, 0, and B would be 4, 4. Now, if I label it on this diagram here, which is obviously not accurate, but give you the idea, so 2, 0, and 4, 4, we can work out the length of the line by finding the difference in their x values, the difference in their y values, and that will give us the lengths of these two sides, and then we can apply Pythagoras. So the difference in x is 2, and the difference in y is 4. So the length AB, so AB squared then would be 4 minus 2, so 2 squared, plus 4 minus 0 is 4 squared. So AB squared is equal to 4 plus 16, which is 20. Now AB is equal to the square root of that, which is root 20. Now it says calculate the exact length, so we'll just leave it in that form. So AB is root 20. So question number 22 is involving standard form. So it says x is equal to a times 10 to the power of n, where a is in between root 10 and 10. Now it says find in standard form an expression for x squared, giving your expression as simply as possible. Now x squared then will be a times 10 to the power of n squared, which is a squared times 10 to the power of 2n, so squaring both items. Now it's not that straightforward. So if a is between root 10 and 10, that means that a squared will be in between 10 and 100. Now that's important because that will help us in terms of writing it in standard form. Now we know that if it's in standard form, that this value here needs to be between 1 and 10. And at the moment it's between 10 and 100. So to make it between 1 and 10, we could divide everything by 10. So if we did a squared divided by 10, that means that a squared divided by 10 would be between 1 and 10. So that would help us. However, that means we're going to need to do something to this to maintain the equality of this expression. So if I'm going to be dividing a squared by 10, that means I need to make this value here bigger to compensate for the fact that I'm making this one smaller. So if I'm making this one 10 times smaller, then I need to make this one 10 times bigger. So in other words, I need to multiply it by 10. So 10 to the 2n. Now, multiplying, so add the indices, gives us a squared over 10 times 10 to the power of 2n plus 1. So 2n plus 1, basically. And that's the expression as simply as possible. Now, I'm going to show you why that works with an example. So let's imagine we had don't know, something like 3. So let's say it was 3 times 10 cubed. Now, if we were to square this, perhaps 3 was a poor choice. Let's go with 5 maybe. So let's go with 5. If we square 5, we get 25 times 10 to the power of 6. However, this is not in standard form. So if we make this 10 times smaller and get 2.5, so 2.5 times 10 is 25 times 10 to the power of 6, which would be 2.5 times 10 to the power of 7. So it's the same idea as what's being employed above here. So if you make it 10 times smaller, we need to multiply it by 10 to compensate for that fact. Otherwise, it won't be the same expression. Okay. Another thing to spot there is this gets 10 times smaller, this value gets 10 times bigger. So question number 23 is lots of angles in a circle. So it says AC is a diameter, AC and BD intersect at E, basically means they cross. CAB is 25 and DEC is 100. It says work out the angle of DAC, so that's this little angle here. Okay, so that's DAC. Now the first thing we can make note of is that this angle here is 90 because this angle's in a semicircle. Now note it says you must show all your working, but it doesn't say you need to state all your reasons, so take the small victory, I suppose. So ABC then is 90 degrees. Now that helps us because we can work out ACB. So ACB is this angle here. Now that's going to be 180 minus 90 minus 25. So that's equal to 180 minus 90 is 90, minus 25 is 65 degrees. So that's 65. Using angles in the same segment, this one here is also 65. So ADB is also 65. We can work out this angle here. So we can work out AED using angles on a straight line. So AED is 180 minus 100, which is 80. So this angle here is 80, which means we can work out this one using angles in a triangle. So the angle DAC is 180 minus 80 minus 65, which is 100 minus 65, so 35 degrees. That's it.